Okay, my friends, this should be quite interesting. I get a lot of people asking about COVID, vaccines, all this stuff. I give no advice whatsoever. I never, ever give any medical advice. Take this, don't take that. I do research. I say, here's what this study says. Here's what that study says. Well, here's a study. This is the largest COVID vaccine study they've ever done. And there's a lot of people, and they're showing certain side effects, yes or no, and how much, and all of that stuff. Now, I think I have some things to add to here relating to enzymes. And I'm going to show you how enzymes are produced, what they do, how they work with chemistry, and I think we're missing a little piece of the puzzle. Maybe this can help, maybe it won't. Strictly research. I'm not telling anybody to do anything medically. Capiche? All right, so let's get started and see what they have to say. Okay, once again, research only, never telling anybody to do anything. This is the results of this largest COVID vaccine study ever. And they're talking about, is there any actual health risks that you face? And they had such a huge study, they could draw some conclusions. Now, it's the largest global vaccine safety study linked COVID-19 vaccines with small increases in health conditions involving the brain, the blood, and the heart. Now, I am going to make some statements about the internal biology of everyone and how vaccines interact with your immune system. All right, I think most people understand now. A vaccine is just like a little nibble at you, enough to alert your immune system to create these other products in your body that will attack that. They're antigens, and they go out and kill the things that are trying to attack you. All right, this could be real confusing or it could be real simple. I'm going to go the simple route. This was never understood before, this particular layer, which houses bacteria and enzymes. Meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. It's a fluid-filled highway. Before, they always had it was compressed. They didn't know there was any fluids in here. Since then, I've been studying this for well over 10 years, and I found out from some friends in Germany that they found tattoo residue was ending up going down onto organs and collecting in fascia, because they were in fascia research as fascia being sports injuries. They didn't consider fascia to be much of anything, but they knew they could rip it and so forth. But anyway, they had found these residues from tattoos way down in organs. So how did that happen? So it ended up being a fluid-filled highway. And I literally discovered that long ago. And in 2018, they agreed and said, yes. Now, why is that important? That's the most important thing we're even going to talk about, because everything happens in that layer. That's your immune system right there. Okay, so once again, research. And they did find that there was some statistically significant rises in Guillain-Barré disease syndrome. And they were expecting 66 cases, and they had 190. And then they had this one here, 3.2 times greater than expected risk of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. And then, anyway, you can come up and read this whole report if you would like. It's not my report. It's what the largest study to date has discovered. And this is in Science Alert. And my feeling is that people are getting a tiny little bit of sickness, and if they can't react to it, then they can't build the antibodies. If they don't have the antibodies, they get sicker. So that's what long COVID is and things like that, I believe. And what does the chemistry to protect you? Well, Enzymes. The only thing that does any chemistry in you at all is enzymes. I'm serious. It's the only thing. All right, listen to this. Where does enzymes come from? Well, bacteria are the factories that produce enzymes. There's tens of thousands of different species of bacteria living in you right now. And each one of them has a specific code that it spits out and makes an enzyme that is extremely elegant. It's like all kinds of tangled up little particles, and they have to be exactly like that to do its job. And it does it using magnetism, basically. It's click chemistry. Instantaneously, it changes everything. Well, I'll show you that in a second. But it says when the right bacteria are present in the right quantities, in the right conditions, they produce enzymes. And they're talking about doing it more economically than you can manufacture them doing chemistry. The bacteria make the enzymes, and that's what they do in you. And enzymes are not alive. They're not alive. They're a little chemistry set. Very complex chemicals produced by bacteria. Well, let's see what they look like. You see that? That is complex. That is an enzyme. And I'm going to show you where they come from. They come right out of bacteria. But when they come out, they unfold, and then they do this. And then when they bump into something with this magnetic signature, and it's magnetism. Each one of these is a little magnetic pole. When it comes up, it goes, and phew, it's like this here. You got, well, I got to show you this before we go forward. There is geometry to this, all right? These are the shapes and arrangements of these things. Now, let's say this is like this. You would have, say, a bacteria that was like that, and it would hit it, just, and it would kill it, all right? But it wouldn't kill the other kind of bacteria because it's not programmed to kill it. It has to be programmed just to the structure. Now, let's say there was 2 or 3 of these hooked all together. All it would have to do is hit one, it'd all die instantaneously. And when I say instantaneously, I'm talking done. All right, when I'm talking about instantaneous, listen to this. Enzymes are the things we're talking about. Accelerate the rate of reactions by well over 1,000,000-fold. Done. The reactions that would take place in years in absence of these enzyme catalysts can occur in fractions of seconds instead of years if they are catalyzed by the appropriate enzymes. The enzymes are created by the bacteria. The reason they don't understand this is because they don't understand the chemistry. In between every one of these molecules or atoms, elements, there's literally thousands of isotopes. And when it breaks things down, it goes brrr, just like that with the chemistry. And they're making and breaking all these different things to create new products in your body. Otherwise, your body could never work. It'd take hundreds of years for you to even walk down the street. All right, this is what's in your blood. This is the metals that are in your blood. And there's basically everything there is as far as metals go. Look at this. All of these 26 elements here that they're searching for, but there's more than that. All of those are in your blood. And then there's a ton of iron and carbon and all these other things. Now, that's in the periodic table here. They're pretty much the transition metals. As you can see, these are all mostly transition metals. Now, what do? Well, they do nucleophilic substitution, which I talk about all the time, and that's how the mud fossils formed. All right, so you know what catalyst is. They're enzymes. So the catalyst by transition metals, which are these ones in the middle, the transition metals, has provided an attractive solution to a variety of important problems in organic synthesis, including nucleophilic substitution. This is what happened because of this great flood. So the nucleophilic substitution reactions, and then it throws some things in here about cross-coupling of electrophiles and so forth. What happens is these things transfer stuff. Let me show you what transition metals do. This is why they're so good at doing their job. You see all these oxidation states? that means they can grab onto a whole bunch of other molecules, drag them around, and drop them off where they want to drop them off, pick up something else, and come back. Listen to this. Transition metals form colored compounds and complexes, all of these. These colors can vary depending on the charge, these are the charges, on the metal ion, and the number and type of groups of atoms called ligands, which are the things that attach to the core. All right, they attach to the metal ion core in aqueous solutions. That means in water. All right, the ions form complexes with colors shown to the right. So if this metal core has a certain number of oxygens and hydrogens and all that business surrounding it, it's going to be one color, and it depends on what the type of metal is and what it will bond to. Now, the electrons are arranged around the nucleus of the metal atom in orbitals. Transition metals, unlike other metals, have partially filled orbitals. That's why they're partially filled. It causes charges. So you don't have to know the rest of that. What it does is it grabs onto other molecules, delivers them, and picks other molecules up and brings them back. That's really all you have to know. Okay, I made it extremely clear that the only way you get an enzyme is to have it produced by a bacteria. And the bacteria's DNA tells it what type of enzyme to create. And they're created in these little balls called ribosomes. Now this flagella can propel this thing all through this fluid-filled highway, and that's why they have these propellers on them. Some of them don't have them, some of them do, but most of them have some. All right, so don't forget, these little balls are going to end up being the enzymes, and there's just literally thousands of different types. So when these balls come out, they unsheath. They're wrapped up in a little cocoon. They pop open. Now, they can either become an enzyme or a protein. This is a breaker. It breaks things and kills things, and this builds things. A protein is a building block. This is something that breaks stuff. All right, now everybody knows about these mRNA vaccines, they call them, because what they're doing is they're sending in a program. This is nothing more than a program, and it's programming one of these ribosomes to become an enzyme, basically. That's the way I see it. All right, don't worry about this. This is a little confusing, but here's what happens. Inside of the bacteria, there's a certain DNA sequence that says, I'm going to make a certain ribosome. So it comes out of here, and then it puts together what's called a polypeptide chain. And that chain comes up and it programs this messenger RNA to go up and interact with the normal DNA to protect you, to keep you vulnerable. Keep you protected from invasion, so that you'll recognize whatever this sequence is and defend against it. Basically, that's the idea here. All right, the way it appears to me is that you have 20 amino acids, and they can be linked in all these different ways, and that's called a polypeptide chain, and that's dictated by the DNA of the bacteria. Now that comes out in a chain, it goes into a ribosome, and it programs that ribosome, transfers its RNA into there. Then this ribosome squirts out this messenger RNA, which goes and links up to the DNA to program it. So don't forget, it shoots out the polypeptide chain that programs the messenger RNA, and then it injects itself into your DNA. So now, theoretically, you're going to be able to recognize invaders and protect yourself. That's what these vaccines and immunity is all about, recognizing. But you have to have the bacteria to create the enzymes. If you don't have the bacteria, you're going to be sick. Now, when they give you a vaccine, they tickle your immune system by just like almost getting you sick. A little bit of sickness. Live bacteria sometimes it's dead. but it's something that your body should recognize and say, oh, we're going to fight back against this. Now, if you don't have the right enzymes, you can't fight back. Can't fight back. And why wouldn't you have the right enzymes? Because you don't have the right bacteria. Because everybody's getting the same vaccine. Everybody I know has had the vaccine. I haven't. Nobody's gotten nothing at all a problem. But pretty much all of us have good, healthy immune system, which means you have good, healthy probiotics in your body. You know, as long as your digestive system is working very well and you poop normally, I'm telling you, that's the whole key to being healthy, is pooping on a regular, consistent basis, moving everything through, and having it consistently not be too fluidy and not be constipation. You don't want diarrhea, constipation. You want to go right in the middle, and on a regular basis. That means your digestive system is working. It's basically as simple as that. And the only reason your digestive system works is because you got the bacteria. The bacteria is the things that break down all the foods coming through you. As I showed you, catalyst, in a fraction of a second, it does years of chemistry. All right, so don't forget, the fluid-filled highway. Well, where is that? You know, how is it affected with cancer? Well, here's the fluid-filled highway right down there. And you should be able to stop that from coming through. Well, something went wrong here. You didn't have the right bacteria. You didn't have the right enzyme. And that broke through. Now, if it breaks through here, you don't have the enzyme. You're not going to have the enzyme somewhere else. So it's going to break through somewhere else. That's what cancer is. It spreads. That's my take on it, based on the research that I'm seeing. If you can break through that barrier, that's stage 4 cancer. You have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and when it breaks through and you start getting these big growth, that's stage 4, and then it's not good. All right, let me just run through these real quick, be sure you remember everything. That's the cancer invading the interstitium. This is saying that, and this is the most important thing right here, bacteria is the factories that produce enzymes. If you don't have the bacteria, you're not going to get the enzyme. Most people have had antibiotics, or they have had bad food or something which kills the bacteria in you. And if it does, and it's not coming back in the right quantities, you can't fight it because you can't make enzymes. I mean, it really is as simple as that. It's not hard to understand. Don't forget this, the enzymes accelerate well over 1,000,000-fold. It would take years if you didn't have the enzymes. And it happens in fractions of seconds with the enzyme. It's just unbelievable. All right, I mean, it's pretty much enough of this stuff. They actually fight each other, these bugs, and versus the attacking enzymes. And the same thing, they attach and they dig right in. And eventually they penetrate, and you're in trouble. And there's a lot of new species and superbugs. And what happens is they get more and more effective at preserving themselves, just like we should. But if we don't have the right bacteria in us to create the building blocks to do that job, it's not going to happen. That means we have to have a full complement of bacteria in our gut, all the different species. And, you know, most people do not have that. That's why they have what they call pre-existing conditions. If they get attacked by whatever it is, very, very vulnerable, because you don't have the bacteria to make the enzymes to fight back. All right, so what am I leading up to? What's all this about enzymes and digestive systems and all this? Well, kids, specifically very young infants, they have a very, very weak immune system a lot of times because they haven't been exposed to a lot of bacteria, basically, during the childbirth. A lot of times that's what it is. They should be covered with feces and vaginal juices and all of that stuff, blood and everything. And they will take that into their immune system and begin to react with that as the birth process actually happens. Now, in addition to that, you know, breastfeeding should be good if the mother is healthy. First of all, that's got to be the key. If the mother hasn't got the right enzymes and bacteria, well, the kid's not going to get it. Now, they have discovered this digestive enzyme replacement relieves growth failure in preterm infants with poor exocrine pancreatic function. Well, why are they preterm? And why isn't the whole thing just going normal? Normally, you need to have the right enzymes. You need to have the right bacteria to have the right enzymes. That's just simple as that. And what we should be doing is testing what enzymes the people have in them, what bacteria they have in them. And then that tells you if they're healthy or not, basically. Like I said, it's the poop. If the poop is good, you should be good. Okay, this is how vaccines work. What they do is they introduce something called an antigen, which is a foreign body, into your body, which imitates an infection and primes the immune system to respond. Well, when they say it imitates, well, it actually gives you just a taste of an infection, basically. And you should be able to respond to that and not get sick. But if you don't have the right amino acids, the right bacteria to create the enzymes, you may not be able to react to that, and you may actually get sick. Okay, this is where if your immune system is not working right, you're getting a weakened live virus, the MMR. And so you're getting an infection, but it's like a harmless infection, they say. And very few, if any, symptoms before they are eliminated from the body. Well, there's different people saying different things. Stephanie Seneff, who is a very respected, I think she's with Harvard, I can't remember now, but she's right up there. And she's talking about MMR, and she's also talking, she's the one that came up with a glyphosate problem with Roundup. And what happens with Roundup is the genetically modified plants can be sprayed with this Roundup and they don't die. And then I guess the Roundup gets in the plant. You eat the plant, and that kills the bacteria. Roundup is a herbicide. All right, but if the plant is modified so it doesn't worry about getting hit with this herbicide, it can eat the herbicide and it still keeps living. So what happens then? I guess you would eat the plant, and then you would get the herbicide in you, and then you would kill your bacteria, which is what you need to produce the enzymes. If that all works for you, you can follow the trail of evidence there. All right, here it is right here. Now, I did contact her, and she was very gracious, and I can't remember whether we spoke or just got back and forth. We went back quite a number of years, but this is Stephanie Seneff, Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She's with MIT, and she's an MIT, look at this, I love the way they do this, our MIT computer scientist. She's not a computer, they love to do this kind of stuff and make people look like they're out of their realm. No, she is a biologist, she's a chemist, she's everything. All right. They would call me a rock collector. Now so she's an MIT computer scientist obsessed with trying to prove the herbicide glyphosate, which is Roundup, causes multiple human ailments and is now targeting the chemical as a factor in COVID-19. She is firing blanks. And they just get nastier and nastier as they go on. They don't like anybody talking outside of their, talking about, against when anybody, their peers. You can't go against your peers. And your peers can't speak, because if they go against their peers, they're done too. Just like she's way outside the realm of being respected as a scientist at this point, because she stands up for herself. This is complete nonsense. An MIT computer scientist, no expertise in agriculture, chemistry, toxicology, biology sciences, none of that stuff. And yet, for some reason, Stephanie Seneff has decided that genetically modified foods are the tools of the devil, and that glyphosate, which is Roundup, is a herbicide. It's a killer of bacteria and plants. It's a plant killer. Roundup kills plants. And it's used to kill weeds. It's a plant killer in the fields of crops that have been genetically modified to resist it. So what do the plants do? They eat it. They're absorbing it. So of course they're absorbing this herbicide. And the reason is because the plants have been modified so they don't care. They'll absorb it and they won't die. So she's saying, yes, this is a bad thing. I agree with her 100%. Because if it's going to kill weeds out in the field, why won't it kill the weeds that are growing in you? And the weeds that are growing in you are bacteria. And if you don't have the bacteria, you don't have the enzymes. You don't have the enzymes, you don't have the chemistry. You don't have the chemistry, your immune system does not work. You don't digest correctly. You don't attack invaders correctly. All of those things make diseases get worse and worse and worse. And that's why I believe a lot of people have long COVID, because once they get it, they still don't have the bacteria in there to fight back. Some people get it, they pop right back. You know, that's the key. If a wide swath of the population is in the same condition as this swath, and these are all dying or whatever, and these are all getting better, and then you have the in-betweens. Well, why? I say it's because they don't have the right enzymes. Because if you don't have the right enzyme, you don't have the right chemistry. You don't have the right chemistry, you're done. Hippocrates said it 2,000 years ago, more than that. All disease starts in the gut. That's where you got to break down all your foods. It all flows through that fluid-filled highway now. That's the key. And they never knew this. And most doctors still don't understand it. They still don't know about this. That's where all this stuff is happening in there. And they actually have pictures of it going on now. They're squirting in and out of there. You see, listen to this. This is the snarky little stuff that they do. First of all, they try to make it look like she has no credentials. She's very, very well appointed at what she knows. Trust me, I talked to her. She's very intelligent. It says she claims that exposure to glyphosate causes autism. That's why I originally got a hold of her, because I'm still working with autistic groups right now, and we had a big conference meeting yesterday, as a matter of fact, with people from Northern Ireland and bacteriologists and, you know, people that have been helped by this regime that they're putting together over there in Northern Ireland with autism. And it's all due to the gut. All the kids that have autism basically have digestive issues. And that's the problem. It's the digestive issue that causes autism. Once you can get that under control, the symptoms, a lot of them go away. Now listen to this now. So he says, she's claiming to show that a graph showing that an increase in the incidence of autism parallels an increase in the sale of glyphosate. She probably just said as an add-on. The whole thing is the glyphosate is killing the bacteria that's in your body. It's killing the bacteria. What we need to do is find out what the right bacteria is supposed to be, and then make sure that the kids have it. Not just hope for the best. All right? It says a confusing correlation with cause and effect is such a fundamental error. Anyone who builds a case in this fashion can immediately be discounted as a reliable scientist. Well, autism rates have also increased in step with an increase in vegetarian diets, yet nobody's claiming that vegetables cause autism. Yes, I am. I'm claiming that if you're eating genetically modified vegetables that are eating up Roundup, then you're eating Roundup. Am I wrong? So I would say the more vegetables you eat that are not organically grown, the more Roundup you're going to eat. So yes, I go along with the fact that it could be harmful. I'm not making any claims. I'm not making any say, don't do that, don't eat vegetables, don't do blah, 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 blah. I'm saying this is what the research shows, and this is what the enzymes and the fluid-filled highway requires in your body to make your body function correctly. All right, so they're just snarking at her, and she's from MIT. She's a very, very competent woman, trust me. All right, so I guess I'm going to sort of wrap it up here. What happens is, in my feeling, is you need to have the right bacteria to create the enzymes to do whatever the job is required, to build certain proteins, to grow certain types of muscle and tendon and all that stuff, because it's going to be a very specific molecule. And like I say, there's tens of thousands of different bacteria in you. There's more bacteria in you than there is you in you. There's more bacteria. They are the chemists. They are the frontline troops. If you break through your skin, you better have some chemists to come over there with some chemistry, which is enzymes, to wipe out these invaders. And that fluid-filled highway can just keep coming and coming and coming. And that's why you should always be able to overcome your invaders. You should always be. You got so much stuff in that highway, it can come in and do the job. But if you don't have the right stuff, it's like you got a fire going and there's no water coming down. Well, you're in trouble. It's not going to come. It's not going to happen. So you need to have the right enzymes in that fluid-filled highway. And once that, I don't care how bad the injury is, you should be able to, with all the stuff and fluids you have in your body, be able to overcome that invasion. But you have to have the right bacteria to create the enzymes, and then the enzymes will do that job. All right, you see this? Fecal matter transplant. Now they call it microbiome transplant, which is just nothing more than the bacteria that's in somebody's gut. And it can be performed in children and adults. Research shows that the fecal transplant can restore healthy bacteria in the lower intestine, which can help control C. diff, which was a very deadly infection, and it can keep it from coming back. In some cases, FMT, which is the microbiome transplant bacteria, can be more effective than antibiotics for keeping C. diff cured. Now, this is Johns Hopkins. I went to Johns. Well, I didn't go there, but I took a course at Johns Hopkins for genomics, and they said, as far as I know, none of the doctors I've talked to understand this interstitium yet. They just don't understand the importance of it yet. And this is nothing more than bacteria creating these enzymes to float around that fluid-filled highway. All right, here you go right here. Yale University. All right. Eat, poop, and live. They knew this back in 2016. I was doing a lot of research on this back then, and they knew it too. It might sound very unappetizing. Many animals eat their own feces, and it goes on and on and on. It talks about how they knew this thousands of years ago. This one guy, wildlife guy, was selling panda poop for $30,000 a pound because they can digest bamboo. And they found it in the desert. What happened, they were in the desert and they were all getting sick during World War II. And the camel dung in its true form would hold a life-saving secret. The soldiers were suffering greatly from dysentery, and the Nazi medical corps was brought in to attempt to alleviate the outbreak. Early on, local nomads were thought to hold a key to the solution because they rarely suffered from this disease, this type of dysentery. In fact, when an outbreak of dysentery occurred, or even when slight diarrhea was experienced, the nomads would diligently follow their camels around. When the camels pooped, the nomad would quickly scoop up the poop and ingest some while it was still steaming. After close scrutiny of the dung, the poop, the Corps discovered that the dung was loaded with the bacterium Bacillus subtilis. This specific species is in the same genus as the terribly pathogenic Bacillus anthracus, which causes anthrax. And, that's the key. All you have to do is have a couple of little molecules change, and it can kill you or it can save you. And when you take antibiotics, sometimes you kill that one, but you kill that one too. I mean, you kill this one, but you kill this one too. So now you're open to invasion. That's the problem with antibiotics. They're like shotgun approach. They get a lot of stuff at once. Now, well, most of them do. So you get respiratory disease if you had anthrax. Now, Bacillus subtilis has since become one of the bacteria species considered good for humans. So you got good ones, you got bad ones. Don't forget now, this is Yale University talking. They say in recent years, and this goes back 8 years ago, 2016, they say a new incentive and method of ingesting feces has resurfaced. Before they would put it in what they call a yellow soup. Now they have a new way, and it has been heralded as a medical breakthrough: fecal microbiota transplants. If you are diagnosed with a gut infection caused by C. diff, Clostridium difficile, colitis, or more commonly known as C. diff, your doctor will more than likely immediately treat you with antibiotics. And that is what the problem. Antibiotics kill all kinds of things. This is because C. diff will cause extreme diarrhea, fever, abdominal cramping, and could lead to death. It does quite a bit. The problem is that many C. diff infections treated with antibiotics are not eliminated because the C. diff rapidly recovers. You don't kill it all; it just comes right back. You still don't have the good probiotic to fight it. So it rapidly recovers because it becomes antibiotic resistant. Well, that's not necessarily true. There's just nothing. You don't have the probiotics to fight against these invaders. So yes, it's resistant because you have no fight. In 2013, researchers tried a radical approach to treating individuals with C. diff. By transplanting fecal matter from healthy individuals into the guts of individuals with C. diff, infections researchers were able to eliminate the C. diff 80% of the time. Eliminate it 80% of the time. You might be asking how the poop was delivered to the gut. Well, it's just like an enema. There were 2 routes to the gut, and both routes have been used successfully. They went through the top and they went through the bottom. More recently, through the oral route has been the preferred route. Eating poop, it turns out, can be a healthy activity. We should know, however, that so far, C. diff is the only infection that fecal transplant efficiently treats. No, that's the only one they've even used it against. They won't even let you have this. You can't try it for anything. The only way you can get it is if you've failed to respond to the drugs. Then you can have it, and then you're cured 80% of the time. Now it's even more than that. Sometimes they don't get cured on the first dose because you're getting all kind of different bacteria, but it's not like it's always the same type of bacteria. You're getting it from different sources quite often. That's the way I take it. So you may get a good one this time and not so good the next time. Now, can they make that into like a completely the same? I suppose they could. But right now, I know that they say if you can have actually up to 5 different courses, and by the 5th time, you're done. You're good to go. It's all over. No problems. Because they say the first one, I think it was like 80% or something. Had a good reaction. Yeah, well, 80%. And then if they didn't, the ones that didn't, and they had another one, they went up to like 91%. And then if they had more, it really just went up all the way to perfect, basically. So that's what the research indicates. And this goes back 8 years ago. Now, why they didn't follow through this? All right, if you got a little bit of geek in you, this will turn you on. Now, isotopes of iron, what does that mean? Iron is an atom, right? Iron's iron, right? No, it's not. Iron can be all kinds of things. And what can it be? These are the isotopes of iron. And what is an isotope? This is an iron molecule. Okay? You take one of these off, it's still iron. You take 2 off, you take 10 off, you take 20 off, you take 100 off, it's still iron. If you're at stability and you put 100 extra on, it's still iron. Look at all the isotopes as we come down the list. This is all iron, 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 iron. Each one of these is what they call an isotope. Now, they have a half-life. What does a half-life mean? It means if it's this isotope, which means it has this many particles, that many, it wants this many. It will only stay this many here for this period of time, a bazillion microseconds, and then it'll break down and it'll become stable. So that's what the half-life means. And the decay mode is, how does it decay? And what is the daughter isotope? All right, you got iron, it's going to break down to magnesium, chromium. And that's on this end of stability, magnesium and chromium. And on the other end, CO, hold on a second, cobalt. Right? See, once you hit stability, you go over the top, and then your daughter isotopes are up over the top. See, before, iron, now they're cobalts up here. When you go below stability, they go into the magnesium, the Mn. See, the iron's in the middle. So you got all kinds of changes going on. When an enzyme hits, it goes and it's done. That's what half-lives are all about. So iron is not just iron. You see, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier until it hits stability. And at that point right there, it doesn't want to give any up or take any on. That's stability. Then when you get more electrons than should be on here, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. It's still iron. And you almost never hear them talking about the isotopes because they can't account for them. They can't account for that. If there's only a couple of quarks in an atom, how are you going to account for all this? Cannot be done. Okay, I just want to make this clear. The reason I was going on and on and on about all these different isotopes is because that is the only possible way that life can interact so quickly with all these different molecules that the oxygen has to work with, and these half-lives and all that. And the only way that you can have all of these different particles is to have enough particles to work with. In other words, hydrogen is not just one big ball. It's not going to work. It can't work in your body. Hydrogen is 1,825, somewhere around there, of these little dipoles. And that's why H2O and all that stuff can work with all these other different chemistries in aqueous solutions. But they're working just like that, so they don't even know they're doing anything. But that's the only way your body can transfer things fast enough to make all of this different stuff that you do work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes, you're growing, you're taking in all kinds of energy, you're feeding your body, you're doing work. That's not nothing. So anyway, it requires the enzymes, which require the bacteria. About 100 times or so I said it, but that's you can't say it enough. People just don't pick up on things. All right, I know I'm making a lot of bold statements, but it all works. That's all I can tell you, and we can see the particles. Okay, I guess that's going to be it. But the only way any of this stuff works is with dipole electron flood theory, which says that there's nothing more than two particles, which is the glowy one, which is the energy, and the dark one, which is literally dark matter. And together, they make up what you call a proton, but a proton is made up of 1,823 dipoles. And a dipole is this. They call them gluons. And they're just nothing more than bar magnets. That and that, two of them together, make a photon. That's all that exists, is these two particles. So you have to understand everything. You have to understand all the whole 9 yards. And I will explain this to anybody, and I can show this to anybody, and I have shown it. So if anybody has any doubt that this is right, I would like to discuss it with them. But, you know, I can't discuss it with every single person, but I'd like to have somebody that has a big claim on this to say, no, Roger, you're wrong. And here's why you're wrong. And I'll present my evidence, and they can present theirs. That sounds fair to me. Research is research, and that's all this is. I'm not telling anybody to do anything. But until you understand even the chemistry, you can't understand what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing at this point. You know, even a lot of the doctors I've talked to, they have no idea about this fluid-filled highway, the interstitium. If you don't read these articles, they just go by. All right, so let's leave it where we started. Could it pose a health risk to you, these vaccines and so forth? If they trigger a little bit of an infection to you, you have to be able to fight back against that. So if your immune system is working well and you poop correctly, I'm telling you right now, that's the key to everything. If you poop correctly, regularly, daily, and it's a nice firm stool, the likelihood that you're going to be doing fine is very high. But if you have all of this indigestion problems and gases and smells and diarrhea and constipation, you're not digesting correctly. It's as simple as that. You don't digest correctly, you're not going to get the minerals and the vitamins and the food and the glucose and all the different things that you need to support your body. And the things that are in your fluid-filled highway are not going to be able to go out to attack these invaders and keep them from puncturing through your interstitium. Once they get through that, and there's nobody to come to your aid, well, then you got a problem. That's a pre-existing condition. And you're usually going to have some kind of beneficial bacteria that can come in and help. But eventually they call it a cytokine storm, where a bunch of other bacteria come in and say, all right, I'll try to do what I can do, and then they all start fighting, and the next thing you know, you're attacking your own body. Basically is what they say. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I can tell you what, you lose control of the ability to fight anything. And I think a lot of the times it's because they give you antibiotics at that point in time, and it just manifests itself a little bit in certain cases. And again, I'm never telling anybody do this, don't do that. But I think as far as professionals go, they should pay a little more attention to this fluid-filled highway and the enzymes which are created by the bacteria, and figure out how to replace that bacteria in a person's body. If you can replace the bacteria, and we can do tests and find out what's your bacterial counts, what does it look like for bacteria in you? If we could do that test, and I think you might even be able to do that fairly reasonably with just a fecal matter fecal matter test, and be able to tell what's in this guy's poop. If it's all good, well, you should be all right. If it's not, what's missing? What's too much? Anyway, I love you all. It's just, again, research only.